All right, guys. Thank you very much. I appreciate you taking an hour out of your busy days to hang out with me and learn a bit about building funnels that convert. So as I said, we've got a lot of slides to cover, so I'm going to jump straight in. So this is kind of a little bit of a lay of the land. Some of those things might not make sense to you right now in terms of why we're talking about this when it comes to building funnels, but in roughly 15 years of experience as a strategist, I run my own digital marketing agency for 10 years. I sit on boards. I'm an advisor. I spend a lot of time with CEOs and boards and executives. And there's a lot of groundwork that goes in before the funnel gets built. There's a huge amount of groundwork that tends to happen, which is what's more likely to make the funnel successful. So since exiting my agency a few years ago, I've been a consultant and then ended up founding VCMO, which is essentially a commune, if you will, or a community of a few CMOs who work on fractional and virtual bases, working with companies of all shapes and sizes to set up and help them run their marketing departments. So this was a very accidental fall in post agency life, but that tends to be how most businesses come to be in any case. So why do I want to start with CEOs don't trust marketers when we're talking about funnels? So the stats are pretty damning. So about 24% of CEOs believe that their CMO has the ability to translate company goals into marketing goals. On top of that, only 19% believe that their CMOs have the ability to drive company growth. Only 27% believe CMOs have a relationship or trust with the C-suite, and roughly half of them deliberately keep their CMOs in operational or executional roles, and they don't bring them into strategic conversations. That is, as a marketer, pretty depressing. Why do CEOs and executives not trust marketers when it comes to strategic decision making? And why do they believe that we are not translating? Why does the company goal not translate into marketing goals? And when we talk about funnels and building funnels, this is the very start of the problem. Marketing drives business outcomes, but you actually have to know what outcome you wanted to drive in the first place, right? So if the business is trying to go left and your marketing strategy is sending you right, it's not going to be a huge amount of help. You might have a really effective marketing funnel, but if it's not tied to any business outcomes, you're not going to get very much praise for it at any level. So a lot of the work that I would recommend, kind of starting with when you're building a funnel is solving the perception problem first. If you want to get budget approved, if you want your funnel to be successful, if you want to get past the red tape, you want CEO, CFO, COO approval, then the perception problem is where the funnel actually starts. So marketing is seen as a cost center. It's often not seen as a revenue driver, whereas sales is like the protected species in a lot of organizations, right? That's where all the revenue comes from. And a lot of that also comes down to the way that marketers actually talk in boardrooms. It's the way that we report. It's the way that we present information. I do think it's a little bit ironic that marketing has a PR problem, right? It's something that we should be better at. And if we're going to be building marketing funnels and we're going to be getting approvals, this is where we have to start. So when I build funnels, this is where it begins. First thing is I get my hand on whatever the business plan or the business strategy is. That is absolutely step one. I read that thing cover to cover, back to front, and understand every single thing that the business is trying to accomplish at a board level and a CEO level. What are the major outcomes that they want to achieve? And I don't just mean we want to be at, 50 million in revenue by, 2050. I mean, what are the specific things that they're trying to achieve? Are we talking about new product launches? Are we talking about market expansion? Are we talking about building new capabilities? Are we talking about acquisition, like M&A of other companies or us being acquired? All of these different things are what come into your consideration set when you're thinking about what does this funnel actually need to do. Second, and this is not necessarily a criticism of anyone in this room, I'm actually very guilty of this as well, is I think as we're human beings, and so we tend to stick to the things that we're comfortable with. And so I see very frequently that when people are talking about marketing strategies, it tends to fall into the areas where we have developed skills, right? And so we are going to go with the devil that we know, and sometimes pushing ourselves and building funnels in areas that we feel less comfortable with, or we feel like we have less contacts, can be challenging. But once you understand what it is the business needs, I encourage all the marketers that I work with to actually really think about what are the best channels that are going to get us there, even if it's something that you don't know. This is the chance and the opportunity to push into those new areas and kind of build our capabilities and our skills, and to show the board and the executive team that we are capable of those types of things. And then the last bit is the reporting language. So I see a lot of this in reporting, which is, we talk about lead generation, or we talk about, specific marketing outcomes and marketing jargon, but it doesn't necessarily translate at a board level, because they don't care about how many new leads we generated. What they care about is revenue growth. They care about market share. They care about what how we're beating competitors to new business. So, instead of saying things like, we increased brand awareness by 10%, we want to say we captured 3% market share worth 5 million in revenue. We always want to try and tie back what we're doing at a marketing level to very specific business outcomes, and wherever possible to a direct revenue number, because the more that we can demonstrate that the funnels that we are building are going to achieve these types of numbers, the more likely we are not just to get the strategies approved, but to get more budget. And as I said before, to remove the red tape. Everyone needs to be brought along this journey with us. And CFOs and CMOs have a long track record of not getting along, because, again, a lot of CFOs just see marketing as a cost basis rather than an investment. And the way that we turn that around and get them on board with what it is that we're trying to achieve is by showing them the financial output, because they're always looking at ways to cut costs, and marketers are looking at ways of building revenue. And those things don't have to be mutually exclusive. We can actually accomplish both. We just need to find better ways of communicating that. So with that background, let's assume you understand the business strategy, you know it inside and out, you're totally comfortable with it, you know exactly what the business wants to accomplish, you've spoken to the CEO, CFO, COO, you understand what they assume the wins are for the next 90, 180 days, 12 months, 3 years. You've got crystal clarity on that. The next thing that I go is into groundwork. So at this stage, I'm still not interested in channel selection. I'm not even talking about budgets yet. I'm not thinking about any of those things. What I'm thinking about is 3 areas. I'm thinking about data, audience, and message. Out of these 3, the 2 places where I spend the most amount of time is data and message. In a world where everyone kind of looks and sounds very much the same, message and creative, and we're going to talk about that a little bit later, is one of your biggest weapons in terms of your funnel structure and how effective your funnel is going to be. So I really spend a lot of time in these 3 areas, again, before I even think about what the channel strategy is going to be. So from a data standpoint, I'm looking at a few things. So first and foremost, most of you, I imagine, I'm not sure how established all the businesses are who are on the call today, but I presume that most of you guys have an existing database of customers. But not a lot of businesses spend time analyzing their existing customers. They're always trying to analyze new leads that are coming in. But I think that there's a huge amount of value in looking historically at who your customer base is. Who are the best customers by total revenue, by customer lifetime, by average transaction volume, or average transaction size, but also transaction volume? What do they have in common? What are their major pain points? How do they think? How do they feel? What are the triggers that brought them to your business? Are they having similar conversations internally? What were the challenges that they had that other customers did not have? We're going to, again, a little bit later, we're going to talk about audience and segmentation and how that all works. But this is a really good way of starting to segment your database rather than demographics and building funnels based on demographics, thinking about it from a psychographic standpoint. So thinking about it from pain points and motivations rather than age and location. Sales team intelligence, for those of you who are in B2B businesses or any business that has a sales team, these guys are on the front line. And marketing and sales often get siloed and split into different departments. But I think that marketers can learn a lot from the sales team. What language do prospects use? What are the common objections that stop deals? How do they overcome them? But also, what are the questions for the deals that they are closing, what are the questions that they ask that are usually good predictors of someone closing, right? So we're really trying to get into the mind of the customer and how they think and how they feel and what are they coming to the table with during the sales process that we can deal with and leverage during the marketing process. Competitor analysis, who's gaining market share the fastest in your category? Who is disrupting? What is it that they're saying? What is it they're doing that's different to what you're doing? Is it pricing? Is it positioning? Is it channel selection? Is it just pure budget? Usually it's a combination of those things and starting to learn from who the big movers and shakers are. And I would also encourage you to think differently about your online competitors and your offline competitors. So when you say competitors and you think about your top three, the competitors who are your offline competitors is usually what people think of, but who you're competing with, excuse me, who you're competing with online might be vastly different. The people who are taking your organic rankings, the people who are bidding on the same keywords as you, the people who are spending big on paid social, the people who are spending money on radio, like they might be different competitor sets, and you need to be analyzing what both of them are doing, not just, let's say, your top two or three that you kind of look at all the time. Think about the other players in the market and analyze their marketing moves as well. And then customer interviews and UX research are kind of the final two areas that we look at. UX research, I'm going to dive deeper on later in this presentation. From a customer interview standpoint, if you can, I would encourage you to look at not just current customers, but lapsed customers and almost customers. So people who are kind of in the sales process, but then for whatever reason went with someone else. If you can get 30 to 45 minutes of their time, and again, just understand what were their pain points, what were their motivations, what was the selection process like, what were the conversations that happened when you were not inside the room? What did that decision-making journey look like? How long did it take? Who are the people who are in that room? What was the trigger that led them down that pathway? Those are the types of things that you want to start thinking about, again, before you select a channel, before you select a message, before anything. You already want to have a really good understanding of who your customer is and how they think and feel and act. Then from an audience standpoint, so this is kind of what I was saying before about demographics versus psychographics. Behaviors predicts purchase rather than age. So for an example, you might have two people who want to purchase a vehicle, but they could be different genders, different age, they could live in different places, but their pain points might be the same. So for example, the examples that I've given there, I might be a business owner who wants to expand my business nationally, but I can't find a bank who understands the challenges of SMEs. It's a very difficult lending market at the moment, and SMEs are finding it difficult to get access to capital markets. So how do I find someone in that space? Now, I could be a 25-year-old entrepreneur, or I could be a 50-year-old entrepreneur and face the same challenges. But psychographically, we have the same motivations. And so someone like Judo Bank, who is a bank specifically for SMEs, would speak to us despite our demographic differences with the same messaging. The flip side of that, as another example, is, two people, exact same situation, just gotten married, thinking about growing a family, want a big, safe car, but conscious of the financial impact because we've just spent a whole bunch of money on the wedding. We want to have a family. That's a cost too. So we want the bigger car, but we're financially conscious at the same time. So how do we deal with that? So someone like LeaseLab that, does novated leasing could be a really good solution, but that could be a 30-year-old woman or a 40-year-old man who are facing the same problem mentally. And so you would speak to them with similar messages. Whereas if I was just to say, we've got one campaign for men aged 50 and another campaign for women aged 30, you're missing the nuance in your market. And then from there, we also want to start thinking about the channel review. So where do all of these persona profiles go to learn how to solve their pain points? Who are they speaking to? What channels do they use? What do they read? Who do they trust? And what are the criteria that they use to make their purchase decisions? So this is where that interview process comes in, because some of this stuff, I would say that a lot of CEOs that I speak with say that they know the details of this because they've been in that industry for a long time. But I'm amazed at how many times you go through the research process and you still learn new things because customers change over time. They change based on all different kinds of factors, whether it be political, economic, social, whatever it might be. The population is always changing and their needs are always changing. So this kind of interview and direct conversation is really important when you come to building a funnel. And then we come to messaging. So when it comes to messaging, as I said before, I spend a huge amount of time here. And that is because my background when I was running my own agency, a big part of what we did was UX and conversion optimization. And messaging and content is such a huge driver of performance when it comes to your funnel. And it's not just when they land on your website. It's the messaging in your ads. It's the messaging in your emails. It's the way your content is written. It's the way your website is structured. Like, content is everything and messaging is everything. And it's the only way for you to stand out. And messaging, by the way, I would probably throw creative in there because messaging can be written and that counts for a lot. But there's also the visual aspect, right? Or audio visual in some instances. So a few things that I would recommend right away is get to the point. Whatever the message is, less words, less waffling, more action. Be intentional with what it is that you're trying to say. Every word should lead them somewhere. But also find your angle. There's so little differentiation in most industries. I could probably look at 4 of your competitors and you mostly look and sound the same. So as an end user, as an end customer, you're not giving me any reason to pick you over anyone else if you all look and sound the same. But when someone new comes into the market and they offer something different, they win market share so rapidly. And you see that time and time again with the disruptors that come into every industry that has gotten stale. They come in with a different message. Sometimes it's the exact same product. It's just packaged differently. And that's enough to get people excited. And also emotional selling. So if you haven't heard of this already, you can certainly look into it more. I'm not going to have time to do the full deep dive today, but people buy emotionally. They don't buy logically. They buy emotionally and then they use logic to justify their purchase. And the best way that I can prove that is every single person on this call has probably at some stage purchased something that was extremely expensive and totally unnecessary in their life. But the way that they justified it to themselves is, I work hard for it, and so I deserve it, right? That is a logical justification for an emotional purchase, because logically, there's probably no reason for me to have purchased a jacket for several $1,000s from, some big brand when I could have gotten just as nice of a jacket for $100 somewhere else. Logically, it doesn't make sense, but emotionally, I was connected to that purchase for whatever psychological reason. And so I bought it emotionally and I justified it logically. So if you can find the emotional hook of your product, and I don't care if you're B2B, B2C, B2B2C, D2C, whatever your business is, I promise you, the person on the other end who's buying your product is still a human being and they still have emotional needs and you can still hook them in. There is an angle there, you just have to find it. And so that last bit there, features versus value. So when you're building and you're writing your content, most people talk about features. And so this is a couple of examples that I've written there. We used advanced cleaning software. This is for a commercial cleaning company. Great. What does that mean for me? Nothing. I'm great that you use technology. That's awesome. You might tick a box, but it hasn't hooked me emotionally in any way. It doesn't make my life any better. Our technology keeps you updated in real time on every site. If I'm a facilities manager, that's beneficial for me. I now have to spend less time going out, reaching to people to find out what's going on. Everything is in there. Now we're talking about value. Same thing like in clothing. Our clothes have anti-wrinkle technology. Cool, great. That sounds good, but what does that mean for me? As opposed to never waste time ironing your clothes ever again. Take my money. I hate ironing. I send my stuff to the dry cleaners all the time. Yes, I am that person. Something like that is going to be much more beneficial to me because it's triggering something for me emotionally that I want to be a part of, that matters to me in my life. So I'm going to show you a really good example of this. Probably one of the better examples in market, which is Athena Home Loans. For those of you guys that don't know, entered the market, have won a huge amount of awards very quickly. Home loans is nothing new. Every bank has been offering home loans for an age and a day. What made Athena different? The first thing is their first ad was love us and leave us, right? Which is a very clever hook. But when you go onto their website, have a look. At the very top, they talk about features and value, right? So 15 minutes to apply online is really a feature, but there's value in their ratings. There's value that they're the #1 digital lender for 2023. There's value that they've saved customers almost $1 billion, right? This is all value. But then the message, they're not wafting on about all this different random stuff. What they've said is, own your home sooner, lose your loan faster. There's not a single person who wants a home loan, who wants a house, who wants a long-term home loan. What they want is to get out as quickly as possible, right? They've tapped into that. So we are more likely to lend to you, and you're more likely to finish your loan with us ASAP. It's short, it's sharp, it nails the pain points of customers, and it's got good emotional hooks. On the flip side, this is ANZ Bank, right? Home loans, buying, renovating, or refinancing, no matter what journey you're on, use our home loan calculators, comparison tools, and guides to help you choose a home loan that's right for you and get you to a good place. This means nothing. You've said a whole bunch of words that does not connect with me in any way. I don't know what get you to a good place means. It's completely abstract. It's not in any way tangible. And so you've used up all this really valuable space, but not actually said anything to me, added no value. And you've kind of just spoken about the features, which is your fixed interest rate, which is valuable to people. But there will be people who are willing to pay the same interest rate, if not marginally more, for a brand that they're going to feel connected to, that offers value in other places, that sells a better story and sells a better message. And so this is what I mean by your messaging. You can have the best funnel in the world, but if you're creative and your messaging sucks, your funnel is going to underperform. And so that's why I spend a lot of time in thinking about what is the message we want to get into market, and who are we trying to get that message to, and what are the channels that they spend time on where that message is going to resonate. So getting into kind of the more nitty-gritty of the funnels themselves. Funnels are really hard. I would say that, again, you're going to hear me talk about the fact that funnels are emotional a lot, because they are. People oscillate a lot between research and consideration now. Like, we see people going to websites and spending, like, they might hit a website 15, 20, 30 times before buying a t-shirt, right? The higher the purchase item, the more research, the more time they're going to spend between research and consideration, bouncing back and forth. So whatever funnel you build needs to account for the fact that it's not linear. They're not going to go from awareness to research to consideration to conversion. They are going to bounce through all of these aspects back and forth multiple times. So how can you build a funnel that talks to them at every stage of that funnel and helps move them through it as quickly as possible, but also supports them through that journey? So we've kind of already spoken about this a little bit, which is consumers make decisions based on emotion. So the other thing I want you guys to consider when you're building your funnels is attribution. This ties back into the conversation with CFOs and CEOs where they go, tell me where we spent money, where we made money back, right? So how much did we spend on Google Ads? How much did we make from Google Ads? A really important conversation for every marketer to have, and anyone who's worked with me or been on one of my talks before knows that I talk about this a lot. But it's a difficult conversation that CEOs and CFOs and boards need to be prepared for mentally, which is attribution is dying. Attribution is not what it once was. Too much is no longer attributable. There's too many channels, there's too many ways for people to get in contact with you, and there's too much that happens offline, and attribution is fundamentally wrong in most instances. Really good example is, let's say one of you guys wanted help with a website redesign project and you didn't know how to do it. You saw me here today and you went, Michael seems to know some stuff. I wonder if VCMO would be able to help. You now go to my website and you inquire. Google Analytics is going to tell me that was inquiry came from direct, but it didn't, did it? You only found out about me by being on this call. So the attribution there is going to be completely wrong. And what I'm going to look at that, and let's say you clicked on one of my paid ads instead. I'm going to look at that and say, Google Ads is working. Let's spend more money on Google Ads. But it's not. What I should be doing is more talks like this. And so when you put that on a bigger scale for companies with millions of dollars of budget, what they are seeing is the bottom, like the last click attribution, is all of these different individual channels. And so they're funneling more money there rather than understanding the impact of those channels and what's happening outside of those channels in the broader market. So when you think about this, like, attributable versus non-attributable buckets that you see in front of us, so much of what happens on the internet is now not the internet, but so much of what happens in marketing is not attributable. And the stuff that is attributable often isn't correctly attributed. That was a mouthful, but I got there. That means that when you're building your funnel, you need to think about upfront and have the conversations with upfront, how are we going to report on the impact of the funnel? How are we going to understand whether or not this funnel is successful? I'm going to give you the answer because don't want anyone having to like scour the internet looking for what's the purpose of today. So some other reasons why attribution is really struggling at the moment: Apple's cookie changes, anti-tracking and privacy laws, ad blockers. Most people don't know this. Roughly half of the internet uses ad blockers, but they don't just block ads, they actually block tracking. So there's a huge amount of volume of traffic going around the internet that is not being tracked, right? You've got zero-click searches happening through AI and AI overviews when you go onto Google. All of that is zero-click, not tracked. Not just the number of available channels that's exploded. Now you've got apps, you've got social media platforms, you've got multiple search engines, you've got AI. There's a huge amount of channels that need to be tracked, and those multi-device journeys are not able to be connected at this point in time in any meaningful way. So that is a major problem with attribution. There's some other stuff there, but again, I'm conscious of time, so I am speeding through some of this. But as Katja mentioned, this will be sent over to you guys as well. So what I'm suggesting is that we move away from attribution and start focusing on measurement. The difference between the two is attribution is I spent $10 on Google Ads, I made $100 back. That's attribution. Measurement is what are the metrics that we are tracking within the business and potentially within marketing without focusing on a specific channel, where if these metrics improve, we know that we are going to hit our business goals and we're going to hit our marketing goals. That's the difference that I want us to start thinking about. So from a marketing standpoint, what does that look like? Well, if I want more people to know about the brand, let's say the goal of the business is, I don't know, expanding into a new market. So you're currently in Australia, you want to expand into the UK. You're going to have to build a brand over there, right? So you're going to need to spend money brand building. You're not going to be able to go straight into performance. Again, depending on what industry you're in, like take everything with a grain of salt, but you're most likely not going to go straight into performance marketing because people don't necessarily know who you are yet. You're going to need a combination of performance and brand. And so you're going to need to build your impression share in that market. You're going to need more people to see you and know who it is that you are. So you need your messages to reach the right people in the right places. Once your impression share is building, what you would expect to see is an uptick in branded conversion rate and direct traffic. Why? Because the more people know your brand, when they're ready to purchase, they are going to come to your website directly, or they're going to type your brand name into Google. So logically, you would think that the more that people know you and the more your brand awareness grows, the more people are going to search for your brand directly when they are ready to make that purchase. I would also expect to see increases in conversion rate and conversions. The reason being that the stronger your brand and the more trusted you are, the more likely someone is to inquire with you over a competitor. The more likely someone is to buy your product over someone else. Building brand equity and brand loyalty in market is going to increase the number of conversions, not just because you increased your budget and the volume of traffic you're getting, but because people actually resonate with your brand and they want to do business with you. So this is kind of like a waterfall of metrics that I would expect to see improving. And these are also marketing metrics that tie into the business outcome. And if the number one thing on the business strategy is we have to dominate the UK market, then I would say, great, let's build a funnel that addresses these metrics rather than saying, let's build a funnel that directly attributes everything to Google Ads and let's just spend more money on Google Ads. Because yeah, like great marketing just isn't about perfect attribution. You want to create awesome experiences that are really compelling so that regardless of how they found you, they want to work with you. That is really what we're trying to achieve with marketing. We're not trying to We're not trying to build, and you kind of hear me say this sometimes, but I don't want to build the channel. I want to build the company. That's the goal. Build the company, not the channel. And a lot of what happens in funnels at the moment, particularly with the way that we attribute the performance of those funnels, is that we are really, really focused on building individual channels. And the second that that channel fails, or the algorithm changes, or a competitor comes in and outspends us, all of a sudden we're at risk. And so our funnels have to be diverse enough to allow for that. Our funnels have to take into account what all these different metrics are. And those metrics have to line up with business outcomes. And so that is going to be a really important part of all of this funnel building that we're talking about. So UX research and conversion optimization. Where does this fall into to funnel building? For me, it falls in both at the start and as in before you build the funnel, but it is also a part of the funnel. So it kind of sits within both. And the reason for that is there's $92 spent on driving traffic for every $1 spent on converting it. That's an e-consultancy report from a couple of years ago. That is a staggering number. And the reason that I say that it's a staggering number is everyone is so focused on trying to get more people to their website that they've completely forgotten to optimize their website. It's the afterthought. It's often the too hard basket. We don't have any money for that, or we've got difficulties with our CMS or whatever the limitations are. We don't have the skills internally for it, or it's too expensive. But we're spending millions of dollars at the top of the funnel trying to build this brand. And we're pouring water into a leaky bucket and then wondering why we're still thirsty. So this is a big area of focus when it comes to funnel building, because the opportunity is massive. If you think about your general market share, you think about how many competitors you have, the market share that you guys have is probably huge, but the execution across most websites on the internet is pretty abysmal, because you're not being, a lot of people that I speak to will say things like, we have the best website in our industry. And that might be true, but people are not comparing you to the best website in your industry. They're comparing you to the best web experiences that they have everywhere. If I go to the Apple website and have an awesome experience, and then I go and try and buy a white t-shirt from, I don't know, mom and pop store kind of over here, I'm not going to be like, oh, well, Apple's got more money, so of course they have a better experience. I'm going to give these guys some grace. I'm going to say, why is this website not working the way I want it to? Why is the load time so long? Why are the images such low quality? It doesn't make a difference that they have different budgets or that they're in different categories. You're being held to the standard that the best of the best set for everyone. And so it's great that you have the best website in your industry. That's a great start, but that's not a good excuse to just kind of sit back on your laurels and leave it there. You need to upgrade your website experience to be the best of the best, period. That's the goalpost, is how do we just continuously make this website better so that when we send traffic to this website, we are capitalizing on every dollar that we spend on getting people there. UX really forms, for me, this is a personal belief. I imagine that there might be some people who disagree with me, but for me, UX is foundational to everything else that happens in marketing. It is the fundamental understanding of who your customer is and what they expect from you as a business, not just from a digital experience, but from all of their experiences, right? It's user experience more broadly. And the learnings tie into absolutely everything. It affects the performance of every part of your digital strategy. It improves the quality of customer interactions, and it aligns your organizational goals with customer goals, because UX is the understanding of what the customer goals are, right? Once you understand what that expectation is, if they don't line up with the expectations of the business, then there's a conversation that needs to happen, right? If customers expect X and the business is trying to deliver Y and they don't match up, there's going to be a big problem. So it allows you to have that conversation before the funnel goes live. And if they do match up, that's awesome. Or you find the areas where they do match up and you focus on that. But SEO, conversion optimization, information architecture, user interface design, the product rollout, content, all of it comes from UX. So what do we do when we talk about UX research? I'm talking about both quantitative and qualitative. So back in the day, you would have, or I'm sure most of you have heard the Henry Ford quote, if I asked customers what they wanted, they would have said a faster horse, right? That's kind of old school. I think the modern day version of that quote is, if I ask customers why they didn't buy, they give me 17 rational reasons that hide the real emotional blockers, right? So all of this quantitative and qualitative research is designed to understand the mental state of who your end customer is. The difference between the two, quantitative is the numbers, so it tells you what behaviors are happening. Qualitative is about why those things are happening. So it's based on communication, exploration of end users. The reason that we do both is one doesn't necessarily tell you the whole story. We want to know the what and the why behind user behavior. This can take anywhere from 4 to 12 weeks to kind of complete an in-depth UX research study. But if you're going to go and invest 1, 2, 3 years in, building your funnels for the next 1, 2, 3 years, I should say, it's worthwhile upfront de-risking and mitigating the risk of your investment in the funnel by making sure that you are using the right messages to the right people on the right channels, and that your end experience when someone lands on your website meets their expectations. Because just like I said in the beginning, you can have the best funnel in the world, but if your messaging sucks, your funnel is going to underperform. Same thing as if the asset that you're sending your entire funnel to at the very end isn't performing and isn't optimized, it doesn't make a difference how much water you pour into the top, it's still going to leak out the bottom. As marketers, we need to get better in our understanding of website optimization and performance. And that's why I'm saying that it forms both the start of the process of building a funnel and the end, because this research applies to both. This is how I would take the information from UX research and apply it when I'm building a funnel. So first of all, once I understand the customer needs, I can incentivize social sharing, reviews, word of mouth, using motivations that are meaningful to them. I can find out what websites customers go to, what influencers they work with, what publications they read, and try and collaborate with them. Try and post content there, get them to write about us, to build awareness on the channels where they go. From a paid standpoint, I would update all the ad creative to be more relevant and enticing, again, based on the known motivators and the known pain points of customers. I would review my keyword selection and make sure I'm using the same language as customers. I would update my ad copy and site link extensions to not just match the customer pain points, but take them to the pages where the UX research has shown that they spend the most time and are most likely to convert from. Get them as deep into the website as possible. Make sure that your campaigns are really structured for relevance and for optimizing the end user's flow. From an own standpoint, review email marketing segmentation, make sure it aligns with your personas. Think about time of day and day of week of when you're sending those messages out. Does it align with customer expectations? You can align your information architecture. You guys can kind of read the rest. I think you're getting the point. There's a huge amount that you can take from the research and apply to every stage of the funnel to make sure that it's really well optimized. And it all comes from first speaking to customers, analyzing their behavior in both natural and staged environments. And what I mean by natural and staged, coming back to this slide, a staged environment would be a customer interview. They know that they're being interviewed, so their answers are probably going to differ a little bit from a natural environment, which might be a session recording or a heat scroll map, something like that, where they don't know that they're being recorded. And so the way that they're behaving is kind of like out in the wild, right? They're just kind of doing their own thing, a little bit oblivious that Big Brother is watching. Whereas the second that they know that you are there, again, we're human beings. Your behavior is going to change slightly. Your answers are going to change slightly. And so that's why I like having the combination of natural and staged. I think that it adds another layer of complexity to the analysis that is really important. And then A/B testing. So this is where it really comes down to the bottom of the funnel. A lot of companies are not investing time in A/B testing. Sometimes they'll do, I suppose, optimization by by community. So the CEO will say, I don't like this message, let's change it. Or, the COO will say, I don't like this color, I want to change it. Those types of changes they don't add any value. They're very, very low risk. Very, very high risk in that you can spend time and money trying to improve things, but because it's not driven by any data, you're just kind of throwing spaghetti testing, you're throwing stuff against the wall and seeing what sticks. Or in some cases, you're not even testing. You're just actually taking dev time to make changes to the website that are not in any way substantiated as going to improve performance. So once you do all the UX research, you're going to have all of these different hypotheses that are worthwhile testing on your website. How can you optimize your site? So I would take all of those hypotheses, rank them in order of priority. And the ones at the very top would be the ones where the most data sources validate the hypothesis. So someone said something in an interview, in the customer survey, they said something similar. You looked at a heat map, it showed that does really look like a real problem. And then the session recordings showed people struggling with the same thing. So you've got 4 data sources that validate something. And so you go, all right, that goes to the top of the pile. Where if one person in one interview says, this is a problem for me, and you can't find that problem for anyone else across any other data source, okay, it's a hypothesis, but it goes to the bottom of the pile. So you guys can build out a really strong list of hypotheses to test throughout your funnel. And that might be testing different messaging, or it might be testing different bits of messaging on your website, or in your Google Ads, or in your paid media, paid social. You can put it wherever you want, but have all of these different hypotheses for testing throughout the funnel. That's going to put you ahead of like 95 to 99% of your competitors, because most people are not using data to make their decisions. They are not analyzing their customers' behavior. They are not taking that data and putting it back into their marketing funnel. They're not using it to guide their decision-making. They are going with, sometimes what the CEO has demanded. And when you're sitting in that room and you're debating with the CEO about what should be done, if you're getting into a debate of opinions, the person with the highest paid salary is most likely going to win that one, right? You've probably heard the term HIPPO, highest paid person's opinion. We've all been in a room where that happens. It's very hard for that person to argue with you when you come in and you say, we did 12 weeks of research on our customers. Here's what they've said that they expect from us. So this is what we're going to do. Because now they're not arguing with you, they're arguing with their customer base. And there's not a good CEO that I know of that's going to take that bait. So a few quick wins. I'm probably going to let you guys read through this one on your own afterwards, because I'm just noticing we've got about 14 minutes left, and I can see that there's some questions coming through that I want to spend time on. But there's just some easy stuff here that you guys can look at on your own website and just read through and say, are we doing these things? Could we be doing these things better? Are these some things that we want to look into? Because these are just things that we know, generally speaking, work. That does not mean that they will 100% work for you, but on average, these things are more likely to improve inquiries and improve the quality of your funnel than reduce the quality of your funnel. So I've just kind of given you a whole bunch of stuff there that you guys can look at when I send it through. Excuse me, I'm just going to... Okay. So I'm going to come back to this point, which is focus on building the company, not the channel. So when we're thinking about this is essentially what you're choosing from when you're looking at your funnel. This is what your channel mix looks like. Now, there's going to be stuff outside of this, but this is going to cover probably 80 to 90% of it, if not more. What you need to start thinking about is, what are the channels that my customers go and spend time in that are going to move the needle on performance? What are the ones that we know of? For example, there's a company called SparkToro, which if you guys have branches either in the UK or US, so those are important markets for you guys, I'd probably have a look at that platform. They spend a lot of time. That whole platform is designed to tell you where your customers go to do research. What are the other websites that they look at? That's the type of intelligence that you can use to help build your funnel and guide your thinking. Because you need to think about awareness, research, consideration, conversion. What are the strategies that we want at every single one of those stages? And it's going to be multiple strategies. at every single one of those stages, or at least, at the very least, multiple tactics. And they need to complement each other. They need to create excellent touch points and push them between each other. So how do you push someone from research to consideration? How can you link between those things? And so when you're building that strategy, if you've already done all that research up front, this bit becomes much, much easier, because a lot of the times customers will tell you where they're spending time. And so you don't have to do the groundwork trying to figure it out yourself, or just kind of roughly guesstimating. I think what some people will find is that their current channel mix is pretty decent and that they're like 60, 70% of the way there. But if you can find those extra couple sources of revenue, those extra like quiet channels that you didn't know were driving and influencing purchase decisions, it will amplify the impact of all of your other channels. So these are the questions that I ask myself when I'm building funnels for people. I thought I'd kind of share them with you guys. Again, there's a fair few of them here, and there's probably more questions that I ask as well. Some of this stuff you guys will probably already know. Some stuff may come out of the business plan or the business strategy that I mentioned at the beginning. But these are all the different considerations, because I could sit here and say, put more money into Google Ads, but your cost per click might be $100 a click and your monthly budget might be $1,000. And so that becomes a really silly investment, because if your conversion rate is 1%, you're going to get 0 inquiries, right? So I can't tell you like the specifics of what channels you should go with. What I can tell you is this is how I think about the problem, and this is how I craft the solution. The intricacies of your individual circumstances and the budgets that you have to play with, like you guys might also say, well, I've got $10,000, but one customer is worth $1 million to me, right? So then you might take the punt on a different channel where you know that you can get directly to that customer. Maybe you just say, yeah, okay, the cost per click on LinkedIn is really high, but there's only 300 people in Australia that I actually really need to talk to. And so I may as well use a channel like that to build an account-based marketing strategy. And then just my entire funnel is just focused on those 300 people. And it starts with LinkedIn advertising, and it starts with content marketing, and it starts with, a dedicated landing page for them. And then I just go really hard on that. Versus if you're I suppose a B2C brand and you're, mass market, then I would say your strategy is not going to be LinkedIn, right? It's going to start with, well, where do my customers spend the most time? And that might actually be social. So, for example, I think it's something like 70% of Gen Z searches now start on paid social or on a social platform. So if that's your target market and you're spending all your money on Google Ads, yeah, okay, you might get them when they're towards the bottom of the funnel and you might win, but you're more likely to win and influence their purchase decision if you start with organic social and paid social and put yourself in the consideration set there and build trust with them, and then reduce your Google Ads budget to capture them at the bottom, but you build the trust at the beginning. And so that's where all of these little intricacies come from, but you have to know what their pain points are first and where they're going to solve those pain points and who are they asking questions of to influence their purchase decision. So you guys can read through these in your own time, again, just conscious of it. But really, we live in an attention economy, and the asset pool is very small. So you have to be really good at capturing their attention and keeping their attention. The best way to do that is to build a brand, right? Again, like 8 minutes to go. So the long story of this slide is brand building used to be really important when we didn't care about attribution, because it was all about TV, radio, and print. And then digital came into play and we went, oh, wow, I can spend $1 and track everywhere where that dollar goes. So I'm going to put all my money into that, because that's what CEOs and CFOs obviously wanted. And it makes sense why. But what happens when everyone just moves onto the one platform that's designed to make one company ultimately very, very rich is saturation. That algorithm is built around competition. So the more people go in there, the more expensive it becomes. The harder every single year, every single person who spends money on Google Ads is going to have to spend 20 to 25% more budget to achieve the same results that they did last year, because that's how the platform is built. So if that's the case, you're eventually going to hit saturation. What happens when you only have one channel going for you in your marketing funnel? Now you have to go back to brand building, because brand is the only thing that's going to differentiate people anymore. Because if everyone is on Google Ads and everyone looks and sounds the same on their website, the reason that people are going to buy from you is the quality of your brand. And that's why Athena Home Loans has been crushing it in the market. It's because they have a product the same as everyone else, and they're using mostly the same channels, but their brand was so much better and their messaging was so much better that people flock to them. And so the quality of your brand is going to directly influence the quality of your funnel. And so this is probably one of the best presentations that I've seen on this, or not presentations, like the reports, analysis that I've seen on it. But what it's basically showing is that on average, over 4 years, as companies reduce the amount that they spend on brand and increase the amount that they spend on performance marketing, their overall sales drops, because they are no longer building brands and attracting new people. They are just focusing towards the bottom of the funnel and converting people who already know them. And so if you're going to build a funnel, I strongly suggest thinking about how are you building your brand and how are you balancing brand and performance. Don't just put everything into performance. And it's why I said in the beginning, CEOs don't trust marketers and whatever else. There are hard conversations that need to be had when we're funnel building, with explaining why we build the funnels the way that we build them, and explaining why we're not looking at direct attribution, and explaining why we're not just pumping everything into Google Ads, even though the ROI looks really strong, is because at a business outcomes level, the overall revenue over 3 to 4 years will drop. Shareholder value will drop. The company's revenue will drop. That is bad for everyone. We want to build shareholder value. We want to build revenue. We want to improve things. That requires a really strong brand. And that's why we need to kind of think about, when we're building these funnels, what are the outcomes that we're trying to achieve for the business and how do we communicate it effectively? Creative isn't a cost, it's an investment. Makes sense. Again, I'm rushing through the last couple of slides. I obviously bit off way more than what I could chew with this presentation, and now I'm trying to chew extremely rapidly and my jaw hurts. Really, again, I've kind of said this bit, creative will amplify the impact of your funnel. You can have an average funnel with awesome creative and have awesome performance. And you can have an awesome funnel with shitty creative and shitty performance, right? Same thing with anyone who's doing a presentation. You can have awesome content that's terribly presented and people will check out. And you can have average content with an epic presentation and people will be really focused on it. They'll listen more. The same thing applies to the rest of your marketing. Don't reduce the impact of your thinking and your strategy by having average creative and average messaging. It's worth the investment upfront. Okay, so I want to talk about this because I think that this is like an important slide. So I said 70%, it's 50%. I apologize. Over 50% of Gen Z start their buying journey on social media, overtaking any other channel. Also, 70% of Gen Zs and 70% of millennials only trust a brand after carrying out their own research. So that means that research phase is super important. There's multiple touch points that are going to happen there. So I've kind of broken out some of the channels to show you where I think they fit in different parts of the funnel. And then this last one, for those of you that are in B2B, I found super interesting. And so I speak about this with all my clients. 86% of B2B buyers have a day one list. What that means is that on the day that they realize that they need a problem solved, they already know the 4 or 5 people that they want to speak to. But they're not even going to go and research. They already know roughly who they're going to do business with. And so 92% of them will actually purchase off that list. So if you're not on that day one list, if you're not in the consideration set the day that they realize that they have a problem, the likelihood of you winning them as a client is very low. And it's why so much of B2B is brand building up front. And it's very difficult to attribute the performance of that because you're spending so much time. The sales cycle is so long. You're spending so much time building your brand and building trust with them that even if they click on your ad and happen to inquire at the very end, it's probably 12 months worth of time that you've spent with them up front trying to get that done. So the question is, how do you get onto that day one list right away? So depending on who your target market is, your channel mix from start to finish is going to be vastly different. Your messaging is going to be vastly different. But when I'm thinking about strategy, this is roughly the buckets that I look at when I'm thinking about my funnel. And I'm usually thinking about multiple tactics here for each stage in my funnel. Where the asterisk comes there is, I don't know what your budget is, right? It might be $1,000, might be $1 million, might be $100 million. And so that will obviously vastly change how many of these channels I pull in to make my decisions. Okay. Q&A. I'm just going to quickly open this chat and have a look at what's been in there. What if our sales team doesn't collect customer feedback, says it's too time consuming? Good question. So while they may not collect feedback in a kind of data-driven way, most salespeople, if they've been in the company for a few years, they can probably rattle off the comments that they hear customers make regularly, even if it's not like written down. I would say people who've been in that industry for a long time should know what the key customer pain points are. If they're doing loads of presentations, there's going to be some commonalities between them. So that I would say that I would expect that the sales team would have some insights. If they have zero insights, or if you feel like their insights don't necessarily match up with what you're seeing from a UX research standpoint, I would always go with what the customers say, right? The customer data comes first. What the customers tell us is the case. Like, that is my ultimate source of truth. What I'm trying to do with the sales team is layer additional pieces of information based on their experience in that meeting. So if in that meeting they tell them that price is the objection, I know that it's not actually price, it's value, right? So if someone says that something is too expensive, it's not that they think it's too expensive, it's they think that the value that you've put against that price isn't high enough. You could offer 3 times more for the same price, and suddenly the price isn't an issue because you've added more value. So I take it's the message, but underneath what it is that they're telling you, and that's what you kind of need to marry up between them. For B2B, why would the other business care to give you time to share why they didn't go with you? It's a good question. You would be amazed how often when I was running an agency, we would call the company and ask them for active feedback, and they are totally happy to share. Like, unless something has gone drastically wrong during the sales process, and for whatever reason, like the relationship has completely collapsed and there's no trust there, you were in that sales process for a reason. They trusted you, they liked you enough to bring you in. For you to say, listen, do you mind if I borrow half an hour of your time, or can I take you out for coffee just to understand a little bit more? People are usually pretty open to that. You don't have to, give them 1,001 questions, but I do think that people are actually pretty open to helping other businesses if you're willing to ask the question. At least that's been my experience. So it is the customer's fault that they don't get relevant emails or suggestions by blocking. I mean, sometimes, yeah, to some degree, if you're going to have ad blockers on, like, yeah, the idea is that you get no ads whatsoever, right? Some customers are just trying to scrub their entire digital profiles these days because they just want to be left alone. And if that happens, yeah, the cost of that is you might not get as relevant advertising. But if you don't want to be advertised to in the first place, you probably don't care whether or not the advertising is relevant. Can we get the recorded session? Yes. Thanks, Mario. If digital online is stunning, the offline experience must follow in the same way. Agree. What is the best ROI channel? It's a great question, and it's going to be very different for every customer. So much of it depends on what is the value of your product, what is the customer lifetime value, what is the cost per click, what does your sales cycle look like? The highest ROI channel is going to be different for every single person on this call. I think most people spend money on paid advertising first because they feel like it gives them the broadest reach with the most accurate group of customers that they can possibly look at. But the ROI is based on an attribution basis. So for example, Facebook, if you look at ROI from within the Facebook's platform, it's going to look amazing because they claim everything. If they see your ad and you don't click on it and you don't like it and you don't comment on it and you just happen to scroll past it, Facebook claims that as a conversion. So the ROI from that channel is going to look epic, right? Because it's a walled garden. They can't see what any other channel is doing. And that's what I mean by it's really difficult to say what's the highest ROI channel. I would say I would want to sit down with you and look at all of your channels and where you're spending money and how they interplay, and understand what is the actual impact of some of the low attribution channels that are high on impact, to see how they impact the high attribution channels that are high on ROI. I don't know if that made sense, but basically trying to take the non-attributable channels and measure their impact on the attributable channels before I determine what is the highest ROI channel. Any suggestion on how to create killer hypo? Recall doing it, but always failed. When you say hypo, I'm guessing you mean hypothesis, is my guess, how to create a killer hypothesis. Kind of what I said before, I would say I would look at all of the data that I have, and I would see where the patterns are across all the data. What are the different data sources showing me that are in common, where people are saying one thing and then their behavior is demonstrating the same thing. So if someone says, I find it really frustrating that on the homepage, the picture there isn't clickable, because in my mind it should be. And then you go to a heat map and you see this huge, like frustrated click button thing, people rage clicking on the image. Well, now you've got two data sources, and then you go to session recordings and it shows people going to that button and rage clicking. Now you've got three data sources. The hypothesis is, if we made this button clickable, it would improve user experience and take them to a place where they want to go, therefore making them more likely to convert. That is a very basic example, but that is how I would try and use the data sources to combine them to kind of create a hypothesis that's really powerful and more likely to generate results. Can you share examples of websites you think do this all really well? Oh, good question. I think in the e-commerce space, I always really liked Bellroy. They do like travel wallets and general wallets and other stuff. And I just think that their images, their videos, just the quality of the site is excellent. Their email marketing is awesome. They've got really high quality. Like, I think that they really understood their customer pain points and the pain points of people who still carry wallets and travel wallets and whatever else. And so I always thought that they were a really good example in the e-com space. I know everyone says Apple, but there's actually some stuff about Apple that I don't love personally. But I think from a messaging standpoint, I think Athena Home Loans does a pretty good job of just like really cutting to the chase and having really clear value prop for why you would use them. Case studies for different businesses, work for a not-profit. Bronwyn, if you want to get in touch with me afterwards, I did a stack of work with non-profits when I was running my old agency, and I can talk to you about different case studies. This is not a sales pitch. I'm just saying that we don't have a lot of time and I can't get through them right now, but I'm more than happy to have a chat to you. Always happy to kind of to help if I can. And trying to see if there's another question. No more questions. Anyone else have a question they want to throw in just before I say thank you and goodbye? Cool. Well, in that case, thank you very much. If these are my contact details here. If you have any questions that you want to discuss offline, there's something happening in your business, by all means, I'm always happy to have a chat. Would love to hear more about it. And just letting you guys know, I am going to be that guy. I'm going to go and connect with all of you guys on LinkedIn. Would love to keep in touch. But yeah, again, really appreciate your time and your questions, and looking forward to connecting.
Thank you, Michael. That's an amazing webinar. We're so lucky to have you presenting for us. And yes, we have a session with Michael, which is not intentional. It just happened that it's the same week. This webinar was not designed to promote the class, but there is a class on Thursday, half day. I put the link into the chat box. Please have a look. If that's something that you want to upskill yourself in, you're very welcome to join. Yes. And the feedback form, I can see the feedback is already coming. Would love to hear from you, because, the more amazing feedback we're going to get, the more chances we have to get Michael back to present for us again. Just joking. But yeah, so many insights. Amazing. Yes, I will send the recording to everyone who registered for the webinar. Yes, I guess this is from both of us. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. I'm going to send it through. I'm going to make sure all of you guys have it.
Good day.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.